This conference will now be recorded.
It is. Everyone's prepared. It's just, and I like how we are doing our best to stay open. That is, it's not the easiest when we have one grade level that is going remote until the end of Thanksgiving, but then we have all the other ones, and then there's a cleaning. So they're doing remote teaching for 24 or 48 hours. And then the elementary school is business as usual. So there's like different degrees of what's going on. Yeah. And my position's like a focal point of all of it. So
communications, Jason.
Yes. Yeah. Since we have a couple minutes, Caleb Myhill from the high school, he does the weekly news. He asked me, and I forwarded the email, if the village board and other Mindy and Anita, if you could record yourself on your phone. It could be 10, 15 seconds, just saying what you are most grateful for. He's putting together a Thanksgiving type, and he wants to do just more than people in school and people around the community. If you guys are interested, you could just record it on your phone and then text me to it, and then I'll get it to him.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. So, yeah, I send an email out, and I'll make sure I'll get another. I'm not sure if I just went the board. I'll make sure I'll get Mindy and Anita, and I'll grab a couple department heads as well. It's a nice little way to kind of get into the consciousness of the kids at school.
Yes, it is. Okay, well, I guess we'll call this meeting to order. We'll start with a pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
The Republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Oh, too slow on that one there.
Well, I welcome everybody this evening to this board meeting. It is the agenda is relatively light tonight, so I don't think it's going to take a lot of time. But then again, we'll know when we get there. There's no one who has requested time before the board tonight, so we'll move right into section 2 of the agenda. There are a couple of items that have been added since this agenda was put out Friday. But the first item we have is just a routine thing. It's updating the and adjusting the estimated costs for labor, materials, and equipment. In our case, it's labor and equipment associated with the New York Department of Transportation and the Municipal Snow and Ice Agreement, which is a 5-year agreement and actually has some time to run. However, each year it is adjusted for increasing labor costs, or sometimes decreasing. It never happens. And equipment costs. This year, and you all have a copy of this in front of you, the labor cost has been increased by 3%, and therefore for the coming year, winter 2020 and 2021, the labor factor will be $15,338.10. The equipment did not change. That remains at $33,161.62. We do not apply materials for the state. This is strictly a snow and ice removal compensation for work that the village does on Main Street, mostly. So therefore, for the coming winter season, the subtotal of labor and no materials but equipment will be $48,499.72. And basically, the adjustment is just the 3% labor factor here. So compared to last year, it was $48,052.98, and this year it'll be $48,499.72, or a difference of $446.74. documents. I suspect you've all had an opportunity to read this document. And I would ask for authorization to execute this and return it to.
So moved.
Second.
Peter, any further discussion on it? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. What's the next item? You have my agendas, right?
Yeah, two of them came up this afternoon. The next one was the training officers pay for the department.
Okay. In the current Lake Placid Professional Firefighters Association collective bargaining agreement, there was a condition inserted this year, and it's been approved previously by this board under the memorandum of understanding and agreement. That item 6 was one driver to be determined by the village who performs training services to drivers and volunteers shall receive extra compensation of $20 per week. Having said that, the recommendation came up from Justin to Chief Moore, recommending that driver Greg Hayes Jr. Be considered for the position of fire department training officer as set forth in the labor agreement. Greg actually has been training drivers and volunteers for several years. He's attained his New York State Fire Instructor Training Certification in 2017. And I frankly, I will say that I think this is a very useful addition to recognize the work that it has to be done down there, because training is an ongoing, continuous process with the fire department, particularly the volunteers who we're required and responsible for making sure that they receive training. So with that said, Chief Moore has furthered that recommendation to me and to the board with the understanding that his compensation would be increased $20 a week to cover that particular function that he's performed now for several years without recognition.
So moved.
Second. Peter, any further question or discussion on that? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, good on that. The next item, I'm sorry, is a recommendation from Justin Roy, and I don't know that he actually had to send this up in this manner. Maybe it could have been handled with a normal purchase order, but I think it's useful to understand what he's saying here. He's requesting replacement of 5 UPS battery backup systems for our radio and server room, which is our dispatch center. And he explains that the UPS systems that we now have are out of date and their lifespan is nearing the end. The newer units of UPS systems are more efficient. Their battery life lasting 5 to 6 years compared to what is 1 year of the current model of the backup. These backup systems maintain radio communications in the event of a power outage and also serve as surge protectors for the sensitive equipment that's involved in the dispatch center. With these replacements, we can ensure our radio and server equipment is better protected without having to purchase replacement batteries for the old system, which would be around $1,200 a year. We will see a savings in the near future. All old systems currently in use will be traded in for credit toward the new purchases. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. There was no purchase order with the document. However, I did investigate, and I was told that the approximate cost is $7,000. So with that said, I'm perfectly happy to have the board act on this recommendation this evening if you're so inclined.
So moved.
Second.
All right, seconds. Any further discussion or comment? If not, we'll call a motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, well, thank Justin for watching out for what maybe more efficient for the department, especially, I mean, our dispatch center really is a 24/7 operation. So I think it's important that we keep up with the technology. Anything else, Anita?
No, that's all.
It's good tonight. Under treasurer items, then we'll move on to that. Mindy, do you have any comments for this evening?
Yes, just, we finished the tax relevy as well as the water sewer relevy. The total return taxes plus interest is $213,000. Well, $213,204.34. And the total water sewer relevy is $67,658.01. We sent that to Essex County today, but pending the board's approval.
We need authorization to do that, actually. So in this case, so the first item, $213,204.34 is the village taxes being sent back to the county.
Yes,
Those will be re-levied on the January 2021 town tax bill when it comes out. In addition to that, water sewer re-levies totaling $67,658.01 are being re-levied. In the same procedure, they're returned to the county and then they'll appear on the property tax bills for January. If I'm not mistaken, Mindy, these numbers are relatively, I'm a little bit surprised given the kind of year we've had that these numbers are as low as they are for re-levy.
yeah, they're just slightly higher on the tax side. Last year's tax relevy was about 198,000 and the fees were about 11,000. And the water sewer relevy is just about the same as last year.
I think that's pretty amazing given the issues that we've been dealing with since last March. That is, I think that may be to some degree an indication of the summer season and the fall season that continue to keep our people working and our businesses engaged.
Mindy, when does the county reimburse us?
We generally get a check from them late January, early February.
Or sometimes as late as April.
Yeah.
I'm not sure this year what to expect because cash flows to the county are somewhat dependent upon cash flows. from the
Better than we
state.
thought they would be.
Last year we got it early February.
So could we have a motion supporting the re-levy of those, of the unpaid village tax bills and unpaid water sewer rents as outlined by the treasurer?
Second?
Scott? And Peter seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay. Take care of that. Anything else, Mindy? You want to comment just on the electric audit? I know the auditors were here last week for a few days.
Audit went really well. They didn't have any issues. They're here about 2.5 days. They did more spot auditing than they've done in the past, only because this year with the cap of when all the stuff Ginny did was finally gone and it went to all the stuff that I had done. So they did more spot audits, but they all came back fine. It went really, really well. I should have a NIPA report. Bill was finishing it up at the end of last week, so I expect it the first part of this week.
And speaking with Bill Freitag, and he'll shortly be engaged in the full village audit as well. So we're moving along this year on a much, much better time frame than we have in the past couple of years. Second to that, I had a brief discussion with him about the rate review that we've had in with the Power Authority for several months, and he's going to speak on behalf of the village with NIPA about where that stands. It seems like there've been a couple of other rate reviews that have kind of jumped ahead of us. So there'll be more on that as we get more information. And that rate review, depending on what happens with this continued suspension of penalties and payments, and inability to cut off utility services, that rate review may become critical.
You're offhand to remember what the total is now?
It's actually reduced. Our aging report right now states that we're about 82,000 in arrears,
So,
which is a lot less than we had been. But we're now receiving heat money, and that's compensating for some of it. So it's going to eat that heat money up really fast. So I expect those balances to go back up slightly. However, I don't know if anybody else saw it, but email on it, that New York State is putting out an LI heat for lighting utilities. So people, because as it stands right now, not only ourselves, but National Grid, NICEAG, and any other utility out there that provides lighting can't do shutoffs. So there's another program that the state has put out that will allow monies to be granted to people to help them pay their light bill just for COVID purposes. I saw it come across. I haven't done a whole lot of research into it yet, but that may be something that we to help us along.
I think the normal heat program and the LI heat program, we should try to get some public information out about that as quickly as we can, because A, there's a benefit to our customers, the utility customers for sure, and B, there's a benefit to our utility department. So let's see if we can collaborate and get some kind of a piece out in the public so that people know that these resources are available to help them.
when's the last time somebody can apply?
The application period just opened for heat itself. As far as the, like, I'm not sure. I have to look further.
Get all the rules and we need to put out a public notice.
I think at this point that would be a huge benefit for people that don't know about it. I mean, there are normal customers in heat that know about it every year, but we may have others that could get some help from it.
This year.
We should certainly pursue it. Anything else, Mindy?
No.
If not, we'll take up the agenda, the affidavit tonight for bills to be paid from this week's audit. It's number 7 of the current budget year. Total bills amount to $245,374.73. And in addition to that, utility refund checks were issued to customers in the aggregate totaling $939.21. I can go through the detail, but I know you all have it. I know you've all looked at the electronic listing of bills to be paid. Were there any questions of any of the bills? A relatively small month, just a lot of paper. If not, could I have a motion authorizing that these bills be paid as presented?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Okay, we're done with that. That's done.
These guys are signing it.
Oh, it looked like it was last time.
They did.
I know I saw the signatures in there.
Okay, under new business, we've got a couple of items. An issue came up in the last several days. It's been looked at by the Watershed Association, it's been looked at by Brennan Wilsey, but it's been noticed that some of the polystyrene flotation pieces that are being used underneath docks are breaking up and they're floating all over the lake. The good news is they float, but the bad news is it breaks up into smaller particles. It gets absorbed by particularly fish life and can certainly shorten their lifespan. We're thinking at the present time again, I think this needs more work with the Watershed Association, that we look into, and frankly, there are I think 7 or 8 properties on Mirror Lake alone that have this type of unprotected foam floating. Probably the biggest dock on the lake happens to be the beach docks, which are floating on the same product. It doesn't have any protection from wind and abrasions that happen, or ice, which is even, I guess, worse. So the question before us, working with the Watershed Association, would be what the appropriate reaction would be, whether we might want to consider some local legislation that would require that this stuff be, if it's used, be encapsulated, which I guess is one way of dealing with it. And then if in fact that happens to be the right direction, whether we need to create a local law to amend it. And that would not be just for Mirror Lake, it would also cover Lake Placid Lake, which there's been no evaluation on the number of users of this product up there. But remember, that's a drinking water source. And number 2, I suggested when I was talking to Elizabeth that maybe what we would want to do is make it applicable to all watershed within the, which would include Mill Pond and Chuck as well. So not that I'm guessing we don't have a lot of docks on Mill Pond. And again, if it's bad for one lake, it's bad for all of them. So there'll be more work on that, and we will be bringing, I expect, the support of the Watershed Association as part of this effort to get it right. I have no idea what the impact is. I do know if the village were to conduct improvements of the beach docks, that we have to find funding for that. And I was thinking that right now with the new community fund out there, that one thing the village might consider doing is, if we can get the estimates, is submitting an application for some of that 2% bed tax money. Art, any thoughts on that you might want to add?
Nothing different than what you and I talked about. I have a meeting on that Wednesday morning, and I'll know more after that.
But I think that is something major, and I think the village, if in fact we're going to promulgate legislation to cover that we ought to probably lead the project off, since we're probably one of the biggest floating docks out there.
So you're going to specify the beach dock at your meeting?
No, we're setting up criteria of who can apply and when to apply and the dollar amounts. We're not down to picking projects yet.
I think I saw a sample application form, Art, or maybe it was the evaluation form that the committee uses when they get applications. I'm not sure.
Yep, I sent you both.
So,
I mean, are you thinking about passing a village law, Craig?
I actually am. I don't know how else to do this. I think we need a little more information from the watershed people, but if in fact our drinking water is taken from a level of, I believe, 80 feet, some such depth, that hopefully this stuff floats and stays on top. But, if it can get into fish.
If we pass a law, we'd have to get right on our own dock.
Yes.
We should know a little more information before, like, can this money be used for that, and how much it's going to cost?
And in order to have it be fully applicable, I would think that legislation would come under the jurisdiction of the code office in some form.
Yeah.
But it seems to make sense. But we've got to think about this a little bit, because there's some major docks on Lake Placid Lake too.
Most of them are on caissons, Craig. Permanent caissons, concrete caissons.
How about the 2 big marinas?
They're all float, but they have encapsulated plastic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they don't have styrofoam.
So it's conceivable that this might not have as much of an impact on Placid, but I think it's if it's critical for Mirror Lake, it just logic says we ought to consider it for, I'll have to talk to the town about how we go about that. But
I'll talk to Bush.
I do think we should get on this and pay attention to it.
Yep.
The other good news, well, it was bad news. We did have an algae bloom on the lake during the warm period. Message I saw today from Brendan Wilsey was that already with the turn in the weather, the current scare has gone away. And I think there'll probably be more information available, but they've been trying to deal with it as they can. But my understanding from Brendan's comments today, which were brief, was that at the moment, at least, the toxic issues of the algae bloom are dissipated for now.
I'm wondering, I should ask Brendan, can you have 2 turnovers? Because the water was 45 the day before yesterday. It's going to get down to 30, 38 again. Can there be more than one?
And that should bring the warm water back to the top. So it's a good question. Maybe we're going to end up with 2 turnovers, which I would think would be healthy for the lake.
It was really cold and then it got really warm.
Yeah. So great question. Want to follow up on
Mother
that?
Nature is bipolar.
Yeah.
If you haven't figured it out.
Well, maybe there's not enough oxygen in the upper layer yet to actually do any good, maybe. I don't know.
Possibility. Okay, the next item is actually Anita's to discuss, so I'll let you deliver that one.
Okay, well, we put out our election public notice. It had to appear by today, and it was in the paper sometime in the past week for the 4 positions that are going to be up for election in the spring. At the moment, that's about all that has to be done. Next thing that happens is the party nominating petitions start being circulated, I believe, as of November 30th. And then about a month later, the independent nominating petitions circulate. I think the next thing this board will have to do isn't until late January or February when you approve the election commissioners. And that's about it. Tomorrow and Thursday, I have 2 election prep trainings run by NICOM. They're about the same every year, but it's always good to have a refresher, especially because this will be the biggest election I have dealt with. So.
And I suspect, depending on where we are, I'm wondering if and again, you're right, usually a mayoral election in March brings out a good crowd of people. I'm wondering if the absentee virtual type
Right.
or absentee type ballot is going to we're probably going to see a bigger demand for those. So it'll be helpful for our community, I think, to get that information out if we can early.
Yeah, definitely.
So no action needed on that. Just need to be aware of the fact that the required notice is out there. Anything else under new business? If not, under old business, the first item is, as it's been normal lately, is the Main Street reconstruction project. As you're aware of the fact, I think we're all aware, the community's aware that the project bid was awarded to Kubricki Construction. And hopefully the next steps with them will be to sit down and begin to work on the strategy as to how they're going to approach the project, given that work is going to take place over a span of probably 3 years, 3 seasons. And that will be a spring season and a fall season with a suspension of work in July and August. For the immediate public's benefit, tomorrow evening, between the hours of 5:30 and 7 o'clock, the village will be presenting a virtual presentation of the Main Street project, answering many of the questions that we can, recognizing that there are questions that will not be answered until we've had some time to sit down with the contractors. At the same time, the form of this will be a verbal discussion of the project. I think there's 17 or 20 slides total. And at the end of that, there'll be a question and answer section. It'll be a chat room type thing. where people will be able to submit their questions. A moderator will be, so that we don't get the same question 16 different times, they'll be grouping similar questions together so that we make efficient use of the time. We're hopeful that that this will accommodate the interest of the community in having a better description of what these are. What you have in front of you is a hard copy of the actual screens themselves. And I believe, do they have the comments that?
I did include the comments in this version, yes.
So as you go through it, you'll see written comments as to what each one of these is describing and plans to do. We'll certainly be very interested in the questions and observations.
And it will be recorded and posted to the village YouTube channel the following day.
That's correct. We're also, this will also be available for presentation to local organizations if the service club wants. It's being preserved in such a way that we can go out and deliver it. You're going to see this headed off tomorrow evening. It'll head off with the Development Commission. They were one of the groups that worked. A number of their people were involved in the Main Street Task Force. And there's a number of issues in this that actually address sections of our comprehensive code or plan. So I'm happy to have them on board with us, and I will be recognizing not only the Development Commission for their efforts and support, but also Roost, whose personnel put this presentation together for us. It's another interesting way of trying to use community resources that are capable of and have the technology that we would otherwise have to go out and find a contractor to prepare. Any other questions on the Main Street reconstruction project for tonight? Art, any updates on land use code at this point?
Not a lot of updates, but I'll just recap what's been going on just so some of you have forgotten or don't know the pieces. But the land code update that was happening with the internal scoping was getting ready to bring in an outside person, and the money that was supposed to come from the town and the village is now being diverted to the development director due to budget cuts in the town. And as far as that position goes, they've actually had 5 resumes come in for the salary they were putting out. They were assuming they would either get someone just out of school with good credentials, or at least hoping for good credentials, or somebody with experience who was close to retirement that might like to come here and do the job. And that's just what they've got. And of the 5, a couple of them look really promising. I haven't released the resumes yet, but that's going to be discussed at tomorrow's meeting as well. And as far as the land code, that's going to be done more in-house now, more details and as that comes about. And the short-term rental update really isn't any different than the last, as that's also going to be part of the land code update.
Okay, I think it's going to be important, especially from the community standpoint, that we try to keep the community at large abreast of progress on this effort as it goes forward, because it has changed from what we initially thought. And yes, it was a budget issue, particularly with the town this year, that precluded the town at least from wanting to go forward, even though we were sharing equally the cost of the outside consultant. So that I wouldn't say that it won't happen. I would say that it's not going to happen immediately. However,
or at least in some different form. We'll just have to wait and see how it plays out.
I think that's correct.
And then as far as the local government communication plan goes, I don't believe there's anything new on that. Maybe Anita has something.
I was going to ask Anita to speak, because I think we want to clarify how that project is going forward, because it is led off. Again, it's a Development Commission project that was undertaken at the request of the town and village. And Anita, why don't you describe where we're at right now?
So Kate has updated a few pages that I will be looking at in the next couple of days. We'll discuss them. And then the next step, she said, would be to decide who else needs to see them. And I thought, since Mindy started off on this project with me, she would be someone to see them. And of course, you, Craig. And then I know Kate wanted to bring it to a work session. So the board would see it there. And then once everybody was on the same page, we would slowly start making those updates.
In essence, at the moment at least, the village is moving ahead on some things that it can do that don't have massive budget impacts. I think the town is holding off a little bit, maybe budget-wise.
But Jay came and spoke to me. He's interested in pushing forward again. So I think we might be coming together again as a group, but we'll see. But that was Jay's indication to me.
I think one of the encouraging things that I've heard from Kate and from Anita is that our digital towpath platform that we have been using for several years now actually has some opportunity in it that might encourage us to want to continue to use that resource for at least a while.
She's really dived in a way that neither myself nor Ellen nor Cheryl had the time to do. And she has, she's come up with some more things that we can do with it.
So I think work session would be appropriate. And, I'd like the full board to be familiar with what work she has been doing. And I'm happy with the fact that it doesn't have a major pocketbook associated with it, at least so far. As we go on, I think there are probably some technological things that we will get to do eventually, but I think we want to walk before we race. Is that a fair statement?
Sure.
Okay, I think, all right, the only other comment that I wanted to make, as we discussed the hiring of a community development officer, I think it might be helpful for the record to just indicate that the funding source for that, and the reason the town can go forward with it, is that the funding source actually would be derived, as I understand it, from a vacation rental permit fees, application fees that are paid for. And that would, in essence, provides a continuing source on an annual basis looking ahead to help support that position. So I think that's why you're not hearing any issues from the mayor or from the supervisor. Otherwise, we all agree it's desirable for us to move forward with that project for the future, as long as we can find, as long as we have a funding source which is reliable. Okay, moving through old business pretty quickly. I've already covered the algae bloom on Mirror Lake, so I don't have anything else to offer on that. Commissioner reports, anything else to bring up? Peter and I were out Veterans Day at Sandpoint. Peter, Kim Davey was very proud to show us the work that they've done in installing new submarine cable in appropriate locations off the point, and also how we were able to bring some of it underground and take it out of the water, which is always advantageous. And in essence, we were upgrading some cabling that was very old with new switching devices. If anything, I think this project probably improves the reliability of electric sources, not only to the peninsula, but also to the islands beyond it. Is that a fair statement?
Yep, exactly.
Pretty well done project, to say the least. And I think the property owners, we're very grateful to the property owners that were involved, that allowed us to work along the right of ways or sometimes where it crossed their property. And from just observation, if you didn't know the work had been done, you might not be aware of the fact that anything had been disturbed at all. So it looks like it's pretty well done.
And improved reliability. That's what it's all about.
So we're happy to see that. I think you're all aware of the fact that the sidewalk in front of Bullwinkle's, where the contractor, I don't know if the fencing is all in yet. You'd think I would have noticed it driving by it, but I didn't. But the project to put a new railing along that area to replace what was beginning to give up, which.
Well, they
Peter,
poured
you
new
did that.
concrete,
You did
new
that
concrete
as
wall.
well.
They poured new concrete wall.
So we're waiting for that to cure, and then they can set the railing. So looks like that may pretty much close out the season. Working with Charisse in the electric department, we actually are busy right now. We're starting to install the holiday decorations around the village while the weather's still good. It's a little bit earlier than we normally would do. But, already several of our businesses have started putting out their own lighting. So it helps, I think, to brighten our community a little bit during a period of time, which otherwise has plenty to worry about. Just in tracking which the supervisor shares with us every day, the number of issues with largely complaints about violations of not social distancing, not wearing face masks. This is a very difficult and challenging project. There are just times when, for whatever reason, people get together and masks are maybe in some cases not being used, but it's not being clearly understood. And those are all followed up on. They're usually, on average, is probably half a dozen a week. In the case, what we're seeing is a combination. Some of them are in the village, but also some of them are outside the village. So we do tend to follow up on those, and we try to encourage the businesses that are involved, if it is a business, to make sure that they get in compliance. In a couple of cases, I think in the last 10 days, we've had one business we had to close temporarily, which is unfortunate, but there was no safety plan in place. And that is absolutely, for that industry, was an absolute requirement of the state before they opened their doors. Somehow they got them open without filing a plan. So there are ongoing efforts for that. Jason was speaking earlier about the situation. Our school is one of the few in the district that is hanging in, and I think certainly our families that have children in school are grateful for that. It's not easy, and we keep our fingers crossed that we can keep our children going to school. There are many benefits of being able to keep the school open in the community. And it's not just the fact that mom and dad have to work. Sometimes it's the meals that the kids get in school that they may not, well, if they are getting them, it takes an extra effort to go out and deliver them. So kudos to everybody in the school that's working hard to keep that resource available.
And I just encourage the community, businesses and visitors, that we stay persistent and aggressive with the measures, mask, social distancing, cleaning hands. We're already seeing what the impact is if we go lax just for a little bit. Our grade level is shut down. So we want our kids to still continue to go to school. Businesses and community members, we still have to be persistent with the mask wearing, washing our hands, sanitizing, social distances. So hopefully everyone will be back by, the school ought to be open potentially by tomorrow, if not Wednesday. And just 7th grade is going to be remote until after Thanksgiving. And that's best case scenario. I just hope that we can continue down that path of everyone coming back and we just staying in school, in session.
And I think you just mentioned something else. Thanksgiving is fast approaching, and we will not have another meeting of the board before that time. So I think given the conditions that Thanksgiving is going to be celebrated under by, I hope, all families, it's going to be different. I encourage everybody to use virtual technology where they can and stay in touch with their families. This seems to be the best route that's available to us right now, although I think we're all encouraged that coming soon, not soon enough, but it appears that we've got maybe the possibilities that there will be some vaccine available that will begin to address, but it will take time before it reaches out around the country and can have the impact that's needed. But when we think about what we're seeing and hearing, I know I was having a discussion with Chief Moore today about this, and there's a lot of information that we don't know. And as we listen to the news every night, what we really don't know, when we know that there's thousands of people that are being impacted every day by this, but what we don't know is where they are in that continuum, how severe they're being impacted, how quickly they're recovering. What we tend to hear more about is those that get hospitalized or get on a ventilator, which obviously are more severe cases. But there's a number of cases that are, as we can see from our own county health department and the very diligent work they're doing, that are asked to isolate themselves away from the public for a period of time, and then they gradually seem to get reintroduced as they test negative. So I think there's a lot out there that we're not hearing. We're hearing the more I don't want to use the word glamorous, but news covers the numbers, but it doesn't cover all of the information that I'm beginning to feel that the public really should know more about. And that's not to belittle the fact that it's a very serious issue for many, because it's sort of.
At the very minimum, Lake Placid is now seeing what the disruption is if we are even lax for a little bit. School shutting down, and it's one of those. It's not ideal, and there may be just positive cases, asymptomatic, but it is such a disruption to not only to the students, the staff, but also the community, the parents. Just right, even though that it's asymptomatic, their symptoms may even be minimal at best. But because of how contagious and the strict protocols in place in order to contain, just sacrifice a little bit now, we can get back to our normal lives sooner than later, I hope.
So Jason, the girl who was tested positive, she was asymptomatic. Why did she have to get tested? Why was she tested?
I haven't. I'm reluctant to dive in onto anything other than what Dr. Catania communicated. I don't quite know the context and why the student was tested. Generally, the procedure at school were very restrictive. If you are sent home with any of the symptoms, whether it's a fever, gastrointestinal issues, which are the two prominent signs for those age ranges, you have to have a negative test within 48 hours. There is a little bit of a leniency with your primary care physician. If your symptoms are progressing, then you're able to, they will delay the contact tracing protocols if you don't have that negative test within 48 hours. It's just the school's approach in order to keep the institution as a whole, the larger institution, open. We have to be super aggressive and strict with the identifying, sending home, and then the requirements of coming back in. So I'm not sure if that's what was communicated, that the individual was asymptomatic. So maybe it was, I don't know the story behind what led to the individual being tested, if they didn't exhibit any signs or weren't sent home one way or another. So I think for HIPAA reasons, they've been very reticent to communicate other than what the procedures are. Like, for instance, if I've last week when I was not feeling well and I was waiting for my test, I communicated very clearly to the admin and the staff that I'll be back. I'm just waiting on a test. And if I was to test positive, I want to communicate to everyone, just so everyone knows what the situation is and they can make the decisions. But that's a choice. There's that fine line of respecting the individual's privacy and wanting the information to be able to maybe understand the full impact. Since we're all local, we all know the different circles, whether this individual works at this particular place and has a group of friends here and their friends are part of this particular club. So it would be nice to know those sort of things, but unfortunately that's we have to respect the privacy of the individual.
Good, thank you, Jason. I think it's just right now we're in a critical period where hopefully we can have all of our people healthy and well enough to celebrate the Thanksgiving period. But we are experiencing some, and unfortunately, it's probably going to continue for a little while. But again, the more diligent we are as a community, the better opportunity we have to keep vital facilities such as our school open and operating. Thank you for that, Jason.
Yes.
Anything else? Any other commissioner reports, activities? Scott, Peter, Art?
I do see that Bill got on. I don't know if he can answer Peter's question, not to put him on the spot.
Question is that?
Your question about whether the lake can possibly turn over twice.
Maybe Bill knows it.
Bill, there was a question that came up regarding whether or not, given the rapid changes in temperature, whether the lake might be turning over twice this fall.
Well, I know it turned over once. I don't know if it has the possibility of turning over twice. I wouldn't know that answer. But it did turn over once, and I think from what Brenda conjectured, it probably has had an impact combined with the warm temperatures on the algal bloom, which was, the unusual weather at the time contributed to it, as it did in the one we believe I heard was in Lake George also.
Well, hopefully that's the case, and I understood from a message that I saw from Brendan today that for the moment at least the bloom is gone.
Yeah, I did a survey on Saturday, I believe, and did not see it anywhere. So I wanted to check back with him in the next couple of days and see if they want to do a follow-up press release and also give us an idea when to take the signs down.
Good. Good. I don't know if you were on earlier, Bill, but we also discussed the polystyrene floats that are used underneath docks on the lakes. And I think the sense here is that we want to work with the Watershed Association to take whatever steps are appropriate to hopefully mitigate the breakup of that material and its floating around on the water sources.
Yeah, I do think that a combined effort would be good to notify any homeowners who have it. Please take them, at least take them out for the winter, and then I would think to restrict any other property owners along the shore to purchase and install floats when there are other floats that are available that don't have an impact, such as the ones that are just basically containers that are air.
Thank you. More to come on that.
Yes.
At this point, if our trustees are agreeable, I'll invite the audience to pose any questions or comments now if they wish to do. Emily, Liz, any questions from you?
Yeah, and actually it's great that Bill is here. Yeah, with the floats, can you tell me a little bit about the impact that they have in the water?
Well, the floats are the polystyrene that is used for swimming floats. And after years of being in the water, they start to degrade. The polystyrene starts to break down into chunks, becomes not only a litter problem, but as these polystyrene beads break down, they also affect the food chain so that they can be ingested by ducks and also fish, thinking that it's food, so then it becomes part of the food chain. So there is an impact environmentally from the floats that is, it can get more pervasive if we don't do something about it.
Okay. So, I apologize if this isn't a question for you guys, but last week I talked to Supervisor Rand, just asking him whose responsibility it would be if restrictions were imposed on the beach. And he said both of you, but he also said that the DEC has jurisdiction over water bodies. So are docks something that you guys would have jurisdiction over, or is that something you'd have to work with the DEC on?
I think we would investigate that. Any local regulation that we might consider certainly would it would be prudent for us to make sure that we understand what the DEC may already have in place. And also, I think it would be, I certainly think we would be interested in knowing whether DEC has other knowledge of this issue that we may not be aware of.
I also think that it would be something that we would reach out to the community as not a mandatory, but more as a request until we get further information and get so that we can support any action that is being taken by any board, whether the town or the village. In the meantime, just educational information out to property shore owners is important to get that started.
Would agree with that. In any event, it's a project that we think we should be exploring and gaining as much knowledge. I agree with your comment that education is a vital part of helping people understand what might be at risk here and also what steps might be taken to mitigate it. And you mentioned something, Bill, that I haven't considered, and that is that time in the water may be one of the issues here. Something that's been in the water for 10 years may not be in good shape at this point, as opposed to something that was put in just last year.
Yeah, true. It takes a little while for it to break down. Depending on wind, waves, freezing, thawing, there's a lot of factors to it. But I do think that preventing any more from being used is the first step.
Agreed.
Is there an alternative that the Watershed Association would recommend?
Yeah, there are actually floats that are basically just plastic containers that contain air.
Okay.
And they are used around the lake, and some shore owners are already using them. And I know they have them in Raybrook at the dock, place that does docks there.
Dock doctors.
Dock doctors, exactly.
Anything else, Liz?
No, that's it. Thank you guys so much, and I look forward to the meeting tomorrow.
Very well. Anyone else wish to bring anything up? If not, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay, this meeting is